Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, we will discuss about components of blood, plasma, formed elements, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Additionally, we will also discuss about blood coagulation in detail. What is blood? Blood is a connective tissue, and it is mesodermal in origin. It has a pH of 7.4, which makes it alkaline in nature. The study of blood is called hematology. The process of formation of blood is known as hemopiesis. The color of blood is light red in arteries because of high oxygen content, while it is dark red inside veins due to lower content of oxygen. Let's take a look at the basic flow chart of blood and its components. The major components of blood are plasma and formed elements. Plasma makes up around 55 to 60% of the blood, while formed elements make up around 40 to 45% of blood. Plasma is comprised of 92% of water, 6 to 8% of proteins, and around 1% of solutes. Formed elements contain blood cells and blood platelets. Blood cells are further divided into erythrocytes, also known as red blood cells, and leucocytes, known as white blood cells. Leucocytes contain granulocytes, which contain granules, and agranulocytes, which don't have granules. Few granulocytes that we will discuss are neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. The agranulocytes we will discuss are lymphocytes and monocytes. Let's observe the composition of blood with the help of an experiment. If we take blood in a test tube and centrifuge it with some coagulant, the components of blood can be observed distinctively. We can see that it shows us 3 layers that are different in color. The uppermost layer shows plasma, middle layer shows buffy layer with platelets and white blood cells, while the lower level shows red blood cells. Now let's discuss about plasma. Plasma is liquid matrix and yellowish in color. It makes up around 55 to 60% of blood. Plasma is made up of 92% of water and contains proteins, nutrients, hormones, salts, and wastes. It contains an anticoagulant called heparin, which prevents blood from clotting inside the body. Some important proteins that plasma contains are albumin. These are smallest in size and the most abundantly found proteins. They help in maintaining osmotic balance and water retention in body. They are produced in liver, fibrinogen, and prothrombin. These proteins help in blood clotting and are inactive initially. When we get injured, these proteins get activated, which converts fibrinogen into fibrin and prothrombin into thrombin. They are produced in liver. Globulins. Globulins play an important role in liver function, blood clotting, and fighting infection. They are produced in liver. There are different types of globulin: alpha globulins and beta globulins. These globulins are responsible for transport of vitamins. Gamma globulins. These globulins are called immunoglobulins. They create antibodies which help in defense mechanism of the body. Gamma globulins are produced by plasma B cells. The solutes that plasma contains are gases such as oxygen and carbon dioxide, excretory products like urea and ammonia, nutrients such as amino acids and glucose, ions such as sodium, chloride, calcium, potassium, magnesium, bicarbonates, etc. Let's look into the difference between plasma and serum. If we separate formed elements from blood, we get plasma. And if we separate clotting proteins from plasma, we get serum. Next, let's discuss about formed elements. Formed elements make up around 40 to 45% of blood. They are composed of blood cells and blood platelets. The blood cells can be further classified into erythrocytes, also called red blood cells, and leukocytes, also known as white blood cells. Now let's discuss about erythrocytes in detail. Erythrocytes are also called red blood cells. Erythrocytes are biconcave in shape. They are formed in yolk sac during embryonic stage. Then, in the late embryonic stage, they are formed in liver and spleen. After birth, it is formed in bone marrow through a process called erythropoiesis. As we know, the middle part of a long bone contains yellow bone marrow, and the ends of bone, known as epiphysis, contains red bone marrow. Red bone marrow contains stem cells, which produce red blood cells, white blood cells, and megakaryocytes, which produce platelets. Erythrocytes contain a protein called hemoglobin that is responsible for the red color of blood. Hemoglobins are responsible to transport oxygen. A healthy individual has 12 to 16 grams of hemoglobin in every 100 milliliters of blood. They lack nucleus to create maximum space for hemoglobin. They undergo anaerobic respiration as they don't have mitochondria. Erythrocytes are responsible for transport of gases. There are around 5 to 5.5 million of erythrocytes per millimeter cube of blood. They have a lifespan of around 120 days and die in spleen, which is referred as a graveyard of red blood cells. The condition of excess in erythrocytes is known as polycythemia, and the condition of lack of sufficient erythrocytes is known as erythrocytopenia. Next, we will look into leukocytes. Leukocytes are also known as white blood cells. They are formed in bone marrow. The process of formation of leukocytes is known as leukopasis. There are around 6,000 to 8,000 leukocytes per millimeter of blood. During injuries, the leukocytes tend to come out of the blood capillaries. This process in which leukocytes come out of the blood capillaries using amoeboid movement is known as diapedesis. Decrease in leukocytes can cause leukocytopenia, whereas increase in leukocytes can cause leukocytosis and leukemia. Leukemia is dangerous because if the leukocytes increase abnormally, it can lead to blood cancer. Let's discuss about the types of leukocytes. There are two types of leukocytes, granulocytes and agranulocytes. Granulocytes are a type of leukocyte that have granules in them. Granulocytes can be further classified into three categories. Number 1, neutrophils. Neutrophils are the most abundant type of granulocytes and make up 40% to 70% of all white blood cells in humans. They contain multilobed nucleus. They are also known as PMNs, which stands for polymorphonuclear leukocytes. They are formed in bone marrow. They are responsible for phagocytosis. Number 2, eosinophils. These cells make up 2 to 3% of leukocytes. They contain bilobed nucleus, which takes a shape of headphone. They are formed in bone marrow. Eosinophils secrete antihistamine, called histaminidase. They are activated during allergy and parasitic infections to fight against them. Number 3, basophils. Basophils make up 0.5 to 1% of leukocytes. They contain bilobed nucleus, which can be in shape of alphabet S. They are formed in bone marrow. Basophil act like mast cells because they secrete heparin, histamine, and serotonin. They are activated in case of inflammation. Now let's look into agranulocytes and their types. Agranulocytes are a type of leukocytes that don't have granules in them. Agranulocytes can be further divided into two categories. Number 1, monocyte. Monocytes are the largest leukocytes. They make up 6 to 8% of leukocytes. They contain bean-shaped nucleus. These cells are formed in bone marrow. They are responsible for phagocytosis. Monocytes are also called macrophage of blood because they aid in phagocytosis to eliminate harmful materials such as foreign substances, cellular debris, and cancer cells. Number 2, lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are the smallest leukocytes. They make 20 to 25% of leukocytes. They contain round-shaped nucleus. They are formed in bone marrow and in few lymphoid organs. They help in fighting infections and diseases. Lymphocytes are further divided into two types, B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. B lymphocytes are of two types. Number 1, plasma B cells. They produce immunoglobulins. Number 2, memory B cells. The function of memory B cells is to remember the first encounter with invading pathogens and to provide effective protection against secondary infection for years. Next is T lymphocyte. T lymphocytes are further divided into four types. Number 1, helper T cells. They help plasma B cells in creating immunoglobins. Number 2, cytotoxic T cells or killer T cells. These cells kill antigens. Number 3, suppressor T cells. These cells regulate the functioning of helper T cells and killer T cells. Number 4, memory T cells. The role of these cells is rendering memory to the immune system against antigens that are encountered before. Basically, both B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes are responsible to provide immunity. Now finally, we will discuss about platelets. Platelets are also known as thrombocytes, where thrombus means to clot. It is formed in red bone marrow by a process called thrombopoiesis. There are around 150,000 to 350,000 of platelets in a millimeter cube of blood. The cells that produce platelets are called megakaryocytes. In megakaryocyte, mega means big, karyon means nucleus, and cyte means cell. So, a megakaryocyte cell is a cell with large nucleus. Platelets are not proper cells because they are fragments of cells. They don't have nucleus. They contain a complex called thromboplastin, which helps in clotting of blood. The condition of increased platelets is known as thrombocytosis, whereas the condition of decrease in platelets is called thrombocytopenia. We have completed all the components of blood. Now that we have completed components of blood, we will learn about coagulation of blood. The process of clotting of blood is also called coagulation cascading. It occurs for approximately 4 minutes. Let's understand in detail how it works. When we are injured, our tissue is damaged. This triggers the production of thromboplastin. Thromboplastin draws platelets to it. As the platelets interact with the air, additional thromboplastins are produced. In the presence of calcium ions, the thromboplastins trigger a series of chemical events that activate thrombokinase. The calcium ion is a very important component required for blood coagulation. Then, in the presence of calcium ions, thrombokinase changes inactive prothrombin into active thrombin. When thrombin is active, the anticoagulant heparin gets deactivated so that it will not stop blood from clotting. The active thrombin converts inactive fibrinogen into active fibrin, which happens in presence of calcium ion. The fibrin forms a net-like structure around the injured area, which acts as a barrier for flowing blood elements. The formed elements and platelets get collected throughout the net-like structure formed by fibrin. Eventually, a brown layer is formed on the injured area, which is called clot or coagulum. This completes the process of blood coagulation. Now let's look at few important points about coagulation. In short, the formed element that starts the process of coagulation is platelet. The proteins that are involved are prothrombin and fibrinogen. Prothrombin get converted to active thrombin by thrombokinase, while fibrinogen gets converted to active fibrin by thrombin in presence of calcium ions. Calcium ions are important for blood clotting. The vitamin which helps coagulation is vitamin K. Heparins are anticoagulants present in blood that are active to prevent the blood from clotting inside the body. If the blood gets coagulated inside the body, it results into hemorrhage. That is why heparins are inactive when thrombins get active during injury, so that coagulation will occur smoothly. Hemophilia is a genetic bleeding condition in which the blood fails to coagulate normally because of hyperactivity of heparin. This can lead to spontaneous bleeding during injuries or surgery. Thank you for watching. I hope this video is useful. Please provide your feedbacks and questions in the comment box below. If you want to keep watching videos like this, please support me by hitting the like button, and please subscribe my channel. See you again with another video.